For 500 years, Europe's apothecaries stocked a drug called mummia, a spice that wasn't a spice. It sat on the shelf beside the nutmeg and the cinnamon. It cost a fortune, and physicians prescribed it for everything from headaches to the plague. It was ground-up human Egyptian mummy, and nobody was hiding it. It was in the official medical registers. In a European apothecary in the year 1600, the shelves are lined with jars. Cinnamon, clove, nutmeg, pepper, each one hauled across oceans at ruinous cost. And among them, one more jar. The label reads mummia. Inside is a dark brown powder, faintly resinous, bitter on the tongue. A physician will prescribe it for headaches, for bruising, for internal bleeding, for plague, paralysis and epilepsy. A customer will pay well for it and think nothing strange about the purchase at all. That powder is a human being. More precisely, it is an ancient Egyptian, embalmed 3,000 years earlier, wrapped, sealed, entombed, then dug out of the sand, broken apart, shipped across the Mediterranean and ground to dust. For roughly 500 years, Europe ate the dead of Egypt as medicine. Kings did it. Physicians recommended it. The official drug registers listed it. This was corpse medicine, and mummia was its most respectable form. And the strangest part of the whole affair is not the cannibalism. It's why it started. Because none of it was ever supposed to happen. It began with a single mistranslated word. The word is mummia. It comes to Arabic from Persian, from mum, meaning wax. And it does not mean a body. It never meant a body. Mummia was mineral pitch, bitumen, a black tarry petroleum seep that oozed from certain mountainsides in Persia and Western Asia, collected in small quantities and traded at high prices. Physicians used it to close wounds, set fractures, and stop internal bleeding. And its disinfectant properties meant it genuinely worked on serious injuries. Greek medicine knew it as pisaphaltos, catalogued by physicians in the tradition of Galen, who recorded bituminous remedies in the classical Pharmacopoeia that Islamic scholars would later inherit and expand. Islamic medicine prized it, and crusaders returning from the Levant carried word of it home. So Europe wanted mummia. Europe had almost none of it. And then, in the 12th century, the meaning of the word quietly came apart. The man usually blamed is Gerard of Cremona, an Italian scholar working in Toledo at the Great Translation School of Toledo, where Arabic learning was being systematically rendered into Latin for a European audience. Working at industrial pace, rendering a passage from the Baghdad physician raises, he defined mummia not as pitch from a mountain, but as a substance found in the ground where bodies are buried with aloes, where the fluids of the dead mix with the spices and turn to something like marine pitch. He had moved the drug from a mountainside into a grave. Others followed him into the error. Translating the physician Serapion the Younger, Simon Genuensis called it the mummia of the sepulchres. And at the great medical school of Salerno, Europe's first, Matthias Platerius of the school of Salerno wrote it into the standard herbal manual with a description that should stop you cold. Mummia is a spice found in the sepulchres of the dead. A spice, filed in the manuals beside the pepper and the myrrh. The mistake was now official, and Egypt had an almost unlimited supply. Understand what the merchants of Alexandria were looking at. On one side, a European market willing to pay extraordinary sums for a rare mineral tar that had to be scraped off a mountain in Persia. On the other, the Egyptian desert. Thousands of years of burials, bodies by the tens of thousands, coated in dark, hardened resin that looked like pitch, smelled better than pitch, and ground down to the same color. Why keep hunting for scarce bitumen when the sand was full of resin-coated corpses? So the tombs were opened, not by archaeologists, there were none, by suppliers. Bodies were broken apart, packed and shipped north across the Mediterranean, into the same ports, on the same routes, and often in the same holds as the pepper and the cinnamon. This is what makes mummia a spice trade story rather than a curiosity. It moved through the identical machinery. Alexandria to Venice. Venice to the apothecaries of Europe. Same brokers, same markups, same shelves. And on those shelves it became entirely ordinary. Between roughly the 12th and 17th centuries and well into the 18th, mummia was in routine use as a drug across Europe. By the 16th century, any well-stocked apothecary carried powdered mummy. The 1618 London Pharmacopoeia, the official register of approved medicines, listed it plainly, noting the taste as somewhat acrid and bitter. Kings kept private supplies. Francis I of France travelled with mummy powder mixed with rhubarb. Charles II of England is said to have taken a tincture made with powdered human skull, the King's Drops, a preparation that extended mummia into what physicians called cranium humanum, ground skull, another branch of the same corpse medicine tradition. And it was Paracelsus, the Swiss-German physician who upended European medicine in the early 16th century, who gave the practice its most influential theoretical justification. Paracelsus argued that mummia contained the vital force of the body itself, a concentrated essence of life that could be transferred to the living. Where other physicians prescribed it out of tradition, Paracelsus prescribed it out of conviction. His authority meant the trade had a philosopher as well as a market. No secrecy, no shame. It was simply what medicine was. And that is exactly why the fraud that followed was so easy. The problem with grinding up a finite supply of 3,000-year-old bodies is that it is, in fact, finite. Demand outran the tombs. And where a trade is lucrative and the product is a brown powder, fraud is not a risk. It is an inevitability. In 1564, a French physician named Guy de la Fontaine, court doctor to the King of Navarre, sailed to Alexandria to buy mummia at the source and satisfy himself it was real. He was shown around 40 mummies in a dealer's stock. Many of them, he realized, had never seen a pharaoh's tomb. They had been made from the recently dead, executed criminals, enslaved people, packed with bitumen and dried in the sun until the tissue passed for ancient. The dealer was not embarrassed. He boasted that he had prepared the whole stock himself within the last 5 years. Asked whether any had died of terrible disease, another merchant said he did not care where they came from, old or young, man or woman, or what had killed them. Once embalmed, he said, nobody could tell the difference. And the counterfeiting did not stop at the dead. In 1610, the Dominican friar Luis de Ureta published an account of the trade in which captives were starved, dosed with preparations meant to steep the body, and then beheaded in their sleep to be worked into product. Whether Ureta could prove it is another question. But it was written down, and it was believed. Meanwhile, the fakery came home. In Europe, body snatchers took the corpses of the hanged, cured them with salt and drugs, dried them in ovens, and ground them into powder for apothecaries to sell. The medicine no longer needed Egypt at all. Not everyone went along with it. Ambroise Paré, the most consequential surgeon of the 16th century, turned on mummia and said so publicly. He called it a wicked kind of drug that did nothing for the sick and could actively harm them, bringing on pain in the heart or stomach, vomiting, and foul breath. He stopped prescribing it and pressed other physicians to do the same. Others saw the larger absurdity. Michel de Montaigne noted the hypocrisy directly. Europeans were denouncing the peoples of the New World as savages and cannibals, while swallowing human flesh at home as medicine. And Thomas Brown, watching the tombs emptied, wrote what is still the sharpest line anyone produced about the whole business. That greed was consuming the mummies which time itself had spared. That mummy had become merchandise, and Pharaoh was sold for balsam. Pharaoh was sold for balsam. That is the spice trade in 5 words. The drug faded slowly. By the 18th century, doubts about its value had spread, and its use grew rare, though it was still sold occasionally into the early 20th. But mummies had one more European career left. Ground and mixed into oil, they became a pigment, mummy brown, prized by artists from the 16th century onward for the warmth of its shadows, and taken up enthusiastically by the pre-Raphaelites at the height of the Egyptomania craze that swept Victorian England. It remained on sale into the 1930s, until Edward Burne-Jones discovered precisely what the colour was made of. When told the tube on his studio shelf contained a genuine Egyptian, he was reportedly appalled and insisted on giving the remaining pigment a proper burial. His nephew, Rudyard Kipling, who witnessed the ceremony, recorded it with a mixture of horror and dark amusement that suggests the Victorians, for all their Egyptomania, had not quite reckoned with what they'd been doing. Which means, somewhere in a gallery, in a quiet room, there are paintings hanging in warm, brown shadow. And the shadow is a person. A mistranslation put them there. One word, rendered wrong in the 12th century, that Europe spent 500 years eating.